We may be back. I'm not sure what interrupted the stream. I'm getting a couple warnings here that things are unstable, so I'm just going to give it a minute to get a pulse back. Okay, so I'm back to normal. Unfortunately, it seems that I have completely emptied out all of my visitors for the stream. So I can see me. I don't know if any of you can see me, but I am going to move forward, assuming that we're okay. But yeah, so if my thinking didn't survive, thank you, Tempmine and Eric Abu. I appreciate the heads up. I don't think the Lethe was the... I don't think the Lethe was the ticket last time. Black Sapphire Wash is almost certainly too much. But yeah, I would feel a lot better if I could actually verify this fact rather than just assume. That'd be bizarre if it wanted a flower. So, I mean, maybe I make the Lethe just for the sake of eliminating possibilities. I need to put a beverage in, but beverages aren't the hardest to come by. Yeah, I think I'm gonna settle for making a Lethe there. Under normal circumstances, I would have used a Faust. I guess I need to use a Trist here, though. And we'll pour a glass of water for the... beverage. I'm sort of starting to constrain myself in terms of actions that I can take, because each time I commit one of these things to a slot, so essentially here all of my Moth and Moon things are going to be occupied until I can use that Trist again. I mean, again, it's not like I need to solve all of this in one day, but it's just nice if I can be a little bit more efficient. But, I mean, again, getting the recipes that are required is part of it, so... the only other thing I could think would maybe be we add the Wormwood Dream and I just see if the Cat Wink does the trick. Assuming I can. Yeah, it's not going to take it. I'm not completely opposed to experimenting. No, that's not going to work. Well, I suppose if it's looking for ink, we could just do that at a desk. Yeah, that wasn't it. Okay, that's fine. Again, it closes myself off from an option, but we don't need to solve all of our recipes in one go. I'll have an input for later steps in the future. brew a moth liquor. Inks of containment with scholar level moon plus a beverage creates leafy. So we've got, so far we've only eliminated one of the possibilities, and it was one that was fairly obvious, but that's fine, we'll carry on. So Disciplines of the Scar. That is a Lantern Edge, I think? Yeah. So maybe this is one that I try with the mirrors and then perhaps the practice equipment. We'll start with the mirrors. It was often said of Lady Ava, later, that she was always good with mirrors. Okay, so we've got Torg's Cleansing, we've got an Old Moment, which always surprises me. We can make the Serpent Milk using Perniculate, but we don't know what the Lantern one was. So this might be a little more likely to work for us. Now, I haven't given us a whole lot of options. Yeah, okay, that's not a huge surprise there, although we don't have the full amount of lanterns, so let's maybe work on that first. I actually don't think I have particularly powerful lantern memories in this case, so the Didymos will do in a pinch, but I would need to find one other lantern. Actually, we can get two. There we go, Earthquake name. All right, now that was unexpected, but that's helpful, so we can eliminate Disciplines of the Scar. And perhaps that's something that I'll keep in mind for my own understanding of the lore. So if you take a look at it, right, so Disciplines of the Scar, to master boundaries through their determination. The scar marks wisdom and regrets. One is often born from the other. So I always took, Disciplines of the Hammer as representing the Lionsmith and Disciplines of the Scar as representing the Colonel. But it is kind of interesting to see the various items that you get when you build these things, right? So for Lantern, you get the Dear Day Lens, then the Old Moment, and then the Earthquake name. So Old Moment, you've had them too, those moments when you seem to look out at the world through another's eyes. What if those moments are real? And then that will eventually become the Earthquake name. Everything comes when it is called, even the nightmares that trouble stones deep sleep. That's a really nice description of an earthquake, actually. I wonder if this has something to do with the Seven Coils. Because if you sort of think of the Old Moment and the Earthquake name, you do sort of think, I don't know, for me at least, I do, it's scaly. That's just kind of where my mind goes. Maybe that's just unique for me. It's a little less mysterious to take a look at the edge stuff, right? So there's Perniculate, we've got a description of that, the Serpent Milk. We've seen both, so I can actually get their descriptions here. So Perniculate, deadly, use gloves to read text produced with this pigment, an ink of power, sometimes called an unsanctioned ink. Although I suppose maybe I shouldn't be surprised because there's the scale element there. And then Serpent Milk maybe is a little less surprising because of its scale, given that it's, serpent related, right? It does look almost like milk, and it is drinkable, but don't give it to cats or babies. Now, the other thing I guess I could say is that there is also the relationship to the mother of ants and the relationships with snakes there. But I mean, again, like you can, as always, you can always put up that, that cork board with the red thread and the wild look in your eyes. There's any number of things that you can sort of justify ex post. So what matters is that I've been able to knock off Disciplines of the Scar on my list of mysteries that I wanted to follow up on. So we're on to solutions and separations. This, by the way, may not be a comprehensive list. It just happens to be the list of recipes that I haven't tried yet. So this definitely seems relevant to St. Tentretto. The surgeon plies the knife and the mason plies the chisel. There are subtler tools than either. Now, Moth I've kind of shut myself off from because of the tryst, but that doesn't mean, we may have other options available to us. So, oh boy, this is one of these. So we've got the Amethyst Ampule, Westcott's Compounds, the Name Day Riddle, the Glass Finger Toxin, Skin Shuck Mead, and Sacrament Asite, and then an unknown 15 could be anything. I think I know better than to just mess around with these right now. That I'm gonna set these aside for a different collection. But great signs and great scars. So this could be a knock or a grail one. So we've got the Amethyst Ampule, Witching to Sane. We've got Curious Hunch off of knock. Witching to Sane, if I soak fabric in the brew, I can twist it into a grailful little cloth doll. Okay, so this is an interesting one for me. So I know what it's looking for, but I don't know if I can satisfy the conditions. Because in terms of things that accept fabric, we really only have the loom. And then it would seem to me that the loom won't accept great signs and great scars. Now, the other way to think about fabric for me would be, all right, well, what about, like, what are some of the other traits that fabric has in common? And in this case, thing, which isn't really all that useful. We should still have some proper fabric kicking around, yeah. No, that's still a thing, too. Okay, because this has been bugging me so much, I am actually going to take the time and just make sure that there aren't other... And like, some of these are absolutely bananas if they'll take fabric, but I feel better saying that I gave this a proper try. Now, I do need to allow for the possibility that the calcite altar accepts fabric that I haven't noticed. Not looking encouraging, though. I can't see any of the instruments taking fabric. Well, maybe the piano if you want to put a... if you want to dampen the strings, but... again, mirrors don't really make sense. So there was once upon a time where the Windlick workbench would just kind of take anything. But those days are behind us. I'm also not expecting some kind of Christmas miracle where all of a sudden, like, the solar altars suddenly start accepting Grail stuff, but like I said, the aim here really is just to make sure that I'm not overlooking things, and one of the easiest ways to avoid overlooking things is to click on and check everything. But it really does look like... So this, I will confess, this is one of the real stumpers for me. Is that, as far as I can tell, there are some recipes which want a high degree of Grail with fabric, but I have not been able to find a way to combine... I've not found something that will accept fabric that will also accept that Grail. Now, I mean, maybe I need to reset the loom in construction, but even then, we did just recently make the Frithweft, so I can't see how that would be the fix. And again, like, it's not like it's the first time I've gone through all of these different areas, so... yeah, I'll admit, this is one that I'm a little stumped by, and it seems obvious enough that I suspect Weather Factory is aware of this situation, so I have a feeling that this may just be a question of a rather subtle puzzle that I haven't fully thought through. But to the best of my knowledge, there's a set of... So, like, Resurgences and Emergences is another candidate for this, where if you take a look at the loom... Oh, actually, no, this is an exception, I think. Just put whatever. Yeah, so the Pale Mommet, that was one we were able to do precisely because it has that moth aspect. So I have a feeling that basically Great Signs and Great Scars is in a similar situation where if I were to find something that would accept knock and fabric, I would be able to make a Pale Mommet off of that. So again, there is the possibility that maybe I've just misread the, the altar to the Horned Axe and the Grail. But yeah, so with the exception of Resurgences and Emergences, I actually haven't quite... I think I know what they'll get me, but I haven't been able to crack the puzzle of actually being able to connect those with fabric in a meaningful way. But then that's some of the fun of playing through the game. But maybe not worth spending so much time trying to solve when I have other tasks. So Inks of Power. I don't recall... Well, I guess the scale element works. So what are we looking at here? We've got Salt Sign Parabate, Stargall, Ugall, Ichor Auroral, Perniculate. Oh boy. Okay. I'm not expecting miracles here. We could add the Horizon Sight. And the Enduring Reflection. I mean, I don't see the blank paper doing the trick, although I think it's interesting that there is a... I do think it's interesting that there's a blank at the altar. Let's maybe take a... I do actually think there's something kind of funny about that. The pet, less so, because we've seen our ability to put pets at... Okay, let's focus on the task at hand. Probably better for me to focus on a place that will let me combine the things that I need. This is going to be a tough one, I think. So I don't think I can use Rose at the alchemy set. I might be able to use it at the dispensary, though. No. Okay. Um... This might get interesting. So I was thinking something about the Ichor Auroral, but then how would I fit that into the current setup? Oh, under Remembrance. Okay, well now I would just need to find the extra rows under Devotion. I mean, anything will do for practice at this point. Okay, so that's not a huge surprise that we got Porphyrin out of that. So I suppose the next question now would be the scale. And to be honest, the scale's actually not that big of a hardship. Let's try that with our friend Saint Tintretto. Again. This one we can add the earthquake name. I suspect, well, maybe with the Perniculate. Well, we have the 15 required there, so that doesn't do the trick. What are some of the other scaly things that I've... Well, I suppose we have the Old Moment. That's also 16. Okay, so that doesn't give us an ink. So I think probably the first thing... The first thing I want to do is try and combine any scale like recipes, or sorry, any scale like objects that we can create. I keep forgetting. Okay. So, Houndskull? It's worth a try. Tanglebrag would be an odd one. Not impossible, but... And again, the key on this is I'm really looking for the things that I've sort of created. Although it did occur to me that Living Relic does have a high degree of scale as well. Okay. Now that, we're one short on the scale, so I'd be a little surprised if it was Skin Shuck Mead, but let's not rule out possibilities. Living Relic is not happy about being bothered for this. I'm running out of ideas. Okay, Now, there is something I wanted to see about. I do think there's something kind of funny about the blank page. I don't know if it would be any blank page or what. So I'm going to fill this with a couple of... Okay, it doesn't take marks. Maybe Anthropology is the better option. I don't know. We'll add my Perilous Imago for now. So I'm kind of back to my nonsense on trying to see how I can relate the Carapace cross to Saint Tancredo. And I kind of keep reaching. I've never quite been able to make this work. No. So I was thinking maybe adding the Perilous Imago or the blank might fill something in. I'm assuming probably what I'm missing here is something related to like a book related to this topic, to try and push it. But with that in mind, I did want to yeah, I don't know. I've been trying to follow up on trying to come up with a connection between the Carapace Cross and Saint Tancredo, but obviously the clearest one that I've got is hello, nearly logical, is pentiments and precursors, and that on its own does not seem to be doing the trick. Now there might be something else that I'm missing. Well, there clearly is something else that I'm missing, or I'm just following a false lead. But it's definitely been one of these things that I can't quite shake, and so every once in a while I'll kind of tilt at the windmill again, or maybe I should call it a white whale. Anyways, one way or the other, let's get back on task. I'll give up on Inks of Power for now. There may be a scale component that we're missing, but I'll figure that out at another time. Sharps is the next one that we're looking for. So Sharps has Moon and Edge. Now, unfortunately, we've set away my existing Moon. And it does look like 15 Moon is the one we're looking for, but I do have other ways of getting Moon involved. So Named a riddle might be advisable. Not looking good. How do I even think about this? The Black Sapphire Wash is probably too much. That's kind of like a final item. Oh yeah, it doesn't take marks. Well, here's what I'll do instead. Let's say we go to the necropsy table. Nope. Nocturnary then. Then we add sharps. This time, I guess we go whist. Still add the Wormwood Dream because I don't really have any other memories to go with for Moon. Even add the fog, but let's not go that far yet. That reminds me, actually, I can make the old wound, I guess? I guess we already tried the ass meal and that didn't work. So... Cat wink for... actually, hang on. It would help if I actually had enough of the relevant aspect. None of these omens give me what I need, so maybe this is a time we add the Black Sapphire Wash. So now anything we add in the shadow section will cover it. All right, so the essential Periost is probably, or however it's pronounced, probably the first thing I want to check. Okay, well, that's good for making it, but it's not the recipe that we need. Phosphorescent scraping, same deal. I'm not going to lie, I'm actually struggling to think of some of the other moon things that I make. A good bit of memories, remains, and liquids in here. We've already got the Black Sapphire Wash. I have a lot of Black Sapphire Wash, actually. I think this might be another case of something I set aside for a different time. Okay, can't win them all. Oh, we've got Mr. Venero there. What is this game? It looks like something you gotta finish to proceed coding. So this is a wonderful sort of narrative card game by Weather Factory called Book of Hours. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Cultist Simulator, but this is the follow-up to Cultist Simulator. I'm actually very far in the game. Right now I'm just trying to fill in a few mysteries that I haven't solved yet, but I'll try and give you the short version of the story. So you start the game washed up on St. Brendan's Cove after a shipwreck. You were sort of invited as the librarian of Hush House, which has been closed for 7 years since a fire. And the first sort of set of mysteries that you need to solve is essentially how do you get out of the storm. You get an address to somebody in the village, and that sort of depends on some choices you make at the start. It gives you almost like a personality test at the start of the game, and that personality test will determine sort of the background that you have. So in my case, I'm the Twiceborn. I remember that I once walked to the House of the Sun as a bodiless immortal, but there was a matter that could only be resolved if I returned to flesh. Now, if I go back to the House of the Sun, I will be hunted and punished. If I stay in flesh, I will be hunted and devoured. I need a third choice. To remain at Hush House as librarian would be one such choice, but there might be something more. Choices definitely matter in this game. In fact, the choices, I won't go too far into this because it's not obvious at the start of the game, but there's a very heavy suggestion that the librarian of Hush House is in a unique position to make recommendations to the godlike entities of this game known as the Hours. There is this idea that there are multiple histories, specifically 5, in which there are sort of contradictory events that happen. So, for instance, in one history, Alexander does not defeat King Darius at Issus, but is rather given a great secret that motivates him to turn around and go back home. And so basically, there are these contradictory... The setting is known as the Secret Histories, and the idea is that the librarian is... I'm giving away a little bit about where the game goes, but I figure it's weird enough that even if you do wind up playing this, you'll be able to... The fun is in actually figuring this stuff out, so actually having it make sense is still intact. But basically, it is suggested that the librarian of Hush House is in a unique position to be able to make a recommendation to the Hours in terms of resolving the contradictions between history. And there are a few things that you can find that will give you information to that end. But there's also other choices that you get. So there is the Tree of Wisdoms. So if you want more of these elements of the soul to do stuff with, you do that by committing a skill to the Tree of Wisdoms. And there's a few different branches. So Illumination, Hushery, Nyctodromy, Skolakosophy, the Bosk, Preservation, Birdsong, Horamachistry, and Ithistry. There will be a quiz on all these names later, so I hope you committed them to memory. But what's kind of neat about these, let's do Door and Wall in this case. So Door and Wall can be committed to Horamachistry or Nyctodromy. If we commit it to Nyctodromy, what may not be? There is a prophecy of a shining city that mortals might build. There is a paradox that a city unbuilt can always be greater than the one that exists. The Night Arts teach that this resolution, that the gate to that city must be fashioned from black sapphire and raised in dreams. Let me try that one more time. So, there is a prophecy of a shining city that mortals might build. There is a paradox that a city unbuilt can always be greater than one that exists. The Night Arts teach this resolution, that the gate to that city must be fashioned from black sapphire and raised in dreams. And then the alternative is we put this to Horamachistry. There is a prophecy, or what should not be, there is a prophecy of a shining city that mortals might build. There is a paradox that a city unbuilt can always be greater than one that exists. The Bright Arts teach this resolution, that the Hours will always forbid the raising of that city, so that it will remain a great hope and a great traveling. So these are two contradictory outcomes, and you have to pick one to commit to the Tree of Wisdoms. And there may be various reasons. I mean, some people just ignore this stuff and go straight for the element of the soul that they're interested in. But I've always taken this as you, the character, sort of resolving your understanding, sort of what is the primary primary aspect of a particular skill. What takes precedence? That is deep diving lore. Yes. So if you like lore, basically, it's a terrible analogy to draw, but I always like to say that these games are really good for the people who love getting the very fragmentary lore from like Dark Souls. Like if you were to imagine a game that is entirely about that, as opposed to just being a supplement to this action RPG, it's actually not a bad description of the the Secret Histories games. So, sorry for slurping my tea. Basically, you even like unlocking the city. You learn the different residents. So there's Reverend Timothy, who was our original contact as the Twiceborn. Actually, I never did do the description of the journal. So I am the Twiceborn librarian of Hush House, and this is the journal in which I keep my remaining memories. The Twiceborn's third choice might be life as a librarian, or it might be something more radical. But you can complete the game by recording any history. You may wish to begin your studies with the Illumination wisdom. Definitely. Okay, so if you haven't tried out Cultist Simulator or Book of Hours, Cultist Simulator is absolutely a roguelike. It will, not only does it not tell you what's going on at the start, it's a game that you learn by playing, but it will kill you for not knowing the right things. So it's one that it can sometimes be a bit trying on people. And if you want something a little bit more relaxing, this game actually started as a joke tweet from the developer. That's what you love. Okay, so definitely I recommend Cultist Simulator, and if you're on the fence about it, I have quite a few videos of me playing Cultist Simulator on my YouTube channel. Not that I want to like self-promote a whole lot of stuff, but if you are curious about that game, I have a lot of kind of I have a lot of playthroughs of me playing that game if you want to see what it's like. Um, But in the case of Book of Hours, there was the lead designer, Alexis Kennedy, put out this tweet sort of saying it's like, I'm imagining a much more relaxed approach to Cultist Simulator. I obviously he's a better writer than me, so I don't know how to exactly say what he did. So um, the but it's something to the effect of, you know, a more relaxed Cultist Simulator where you're managing an occult library. You know, if this tweet gets, you know, over 1,000 likes, I'll make the game or something like that. And the internet being what it is, of course the tweet gets a whole lot of likes. But, you know, then Weather Factory kind of sits down and says, well, you know, there's clearly interest in this thing, so maybe we should actually make this game. And then a couple years later, we have the wonderful game that is Book of Hours. So this one is not as unforgiving as Cultist Simulator. However, it takes that opportunity to go even deeper in the lore. So I'll give you a little bit of an example in terms of how this stuff starts being peeled away. So you don't need to play Cultist Simulator to necessarily understand what's going on, although obviously some things will mean more. If the internet could unite as a unit, we would have reached Mars. Yeah, well, they'll unite in order to make Weather Factory make Book of Hours, it seems. But for instance, to me, when I remember that I once walked the House of the Sun as a bodiless immortal. I know exactly what the House of the Sun is. But that may not be obvious to anyone else. And so, just to give you an example in terms of how this game gives you little threads to tug on, it's worth remembering that every single room in here, so once I get to the village, then I have to unlock the Kukurbit Bridge, then we unlock the Keeper's quarters, and then we unlock the house, and every single one of these rooms is blocked, and we need to find someone to help us to unlock these rooms and solve some of the mysteries inside. And there's sort of descriptions in terms of what's going on in the house. But one of these rooms, the Westcott room, by God, sir, we shall have no cigars in the library, and we shall have no house without a smoking room. Dr. Ambrose Westcott, 1734-1797. Here we have got the manses. Yes, not all of them are block-shaped. Some of them are, well, they all have 4 lines, but some of them are longer than others. But in this case, we have this painting, the manses. There have been many attempts to depict the House of the Sun. This, by the visionary painter known only as the Magyar, is the best known. It's signed and dated. If it's really the original, it must count as one of the great treasures of the house. So yeah, no worries. So one of the things that's nice about this is that even if you've never played Cultist Simulator, once you get to the Westcott room, you have a painting that connects the House of the Sun to the manses. And so with all of the different books that you find, and I'm sure you've noticed that there's quite a few books in this, including scrolls, now every time you see a reference to the manses, you're going to be able to connect it to this painting, and it'll be the House of the Sun. And if you're playing as the Twiceborn, as opposed to the Executioner or the Artist or any of the other legacies, that's the connection that you can now make. Now you understand where this person has come from. So I think it's a nice little way of doing it. But as you see, when we're talking about the depth of the lore, it's asking a lot of you in order to make these connections. Some of these are quite narrow. And of course, if you don't get the right books, you may be left with some missing pieces in terms of the puzzle. And that's some of the fun, right? So I talked a little bit about a fire, and it's not because I've been restoring the house. One of the mysteries that you need to figure out in the house is there are these references to a fire that's happened, and yet there's very little evidence of a fire until you get much deeper in the house. And before I'm done, I'm going to move on to trying to figure out a few things with my various skills here. But another thing I really like about the game is that the house itself is kind of a character. And there are the different phases of the house, the different eras. So you can take a look at the different rooms, and the rooms are marked with different eras. And in this case, what I've got here is I've got the baronial period. So in the 16th century, the De Wolf family tree became the Barons Brandkrug, governing the Isle as their personal estate until 1759, when their line ended in madness and death. And you'll notice I'm holding my mouse over the rooms. All of the pink flashing rooms are rooms that are associated with this baronial period. I would say it's a character-focused game. So in the sense, you do play a character, right? I am playing the Thirdborn, and I am... the Twiceborn. Twiceborn looking for his third choice. And I feel like the... I'm telling the story of my character. And there's certainly a bunch of different personalities that you run into. So for instance, we had a visitor to the... In fact, the first DLC has been announced. House of Light, which is going to be expanding the interactions with the visitors. But in this case, we've got Dr. Yvette Southey coming in. And time-based, I mean, I'm almost playing it like a turn-based game, but it definitely resembles sort of a clicker game in the sense that you'll commit something and there'll be a timer that goes down. But yeah, you have a day to finish things. But again, the game's more relaxed than Cultist Simulator, so you don't need to worry about starving to death like you do in Cultist Simulator. So it's time-based. You do have a certain amount of time in which to get certain things done, but you don't necessarily need to worry too much about the consequences. Definitely Weather Factory's plan in terms of game development is to make very unique experiences that appeal to a specific niche, as opposed to make something that is intended to be a mass like a piece of sort of mass entertainment. Now that said, these games have actually been very successful. So one of the things I do like about the game is that it is shown just how well very unique games can do. And I'm hoping what that means is it allows more game developers to get ambitious in terms of the types of stories that they want to tell. But yeah, I would definitely say that a game that sort of holds back some of its information at a fairly regular basis, obviously that's going to have a certain that's definitely going to have a specific kind of audience. Also, I apologize. I forgot what skill I was on. So sharps, glass blowing, and vessel crafting next. Yeah, well, it's I think Weather Factory's done something really impressive here, which is, and sorry, I'm going to get on my soapbox for a bit, but again, we've been testing through our different skills and such. A very large promise of independent game development has been that the lowering the costs of development, and there's a number of different ways that this has happened. So, even if we ignore things like lower prices for Unreal and tools like Unity and even the open source engines. Even the simple idea that it's much easier to program nowadays. So once upon a time, if you wanted to make Civilization, you'd be writing that in C. And I mean, C is not impossible to learn, but, it's even easier to make things in Python now. And of course, inside of Python, you've got frameworks like Pygame. Now, that may not be the best option that you have in terms of being able to make a game, but it's, it is much easier to sort of pick up and start implementing an idea. In fact, another good example of this would be Swift, right? Apple's, that's kind of what they recommend if you want to make an iOS app. So even if you don't use a specific tool designed for game development like Unity or Unreal, even just picking up something that a company that provides the platform, so like Apple's iOS or Mac OS or iPad OS. I'm assuming that the watch isn't really a game development. It isn't really suitable for games, but who knows? Maybe there is something good for Apple Watches, and I haven't tried it yet. But it's much easier to make something now, right? There's very good APIs. There's programming languages which are much easier to much easier to use. But the fact of the matter is that there's a bunch of tools that will make it easier to make games, right? So I think Mass Effect was made using Unreal Engine 3. Well, you can use Unreal Engine 5, a better version of the tools that BioWare used to make, a very influential and popular RPG series. Now, the fact of the matter is that, people don't have the same staff as BioWare, and, it's not like you can pull a Mass Effect out of your back pocket. But certainly the cost of these tools have gone down quite a bit. And one of the things that's happened is that we have gotten a lot of very high-quality indie games as a result of it. So you can think of Subnauticas and Hades and Satisfactories and things like that. But these are games with fairly sizable budgets on their own. And of course, they're finding success. It's wonderful for this sort of stuff. But there is another version of this, which is that people don't need to spend a lot of money to make something that would be a more mainstream piece of entertainment. There's absolutely nothing wrong with something being mainstream. I mean, like Terminator is a very mainstream movie, but it sure has a hell of a lot to say, and I'm very happy that it exists. But you can also kind of go the very deep indie route, which is one of the things that Weather Factory seems to do, which is to basically say, this is going to turn some people off, right? Some people are just simply not going to like this sort of diorama art style, or, they're not going to like the fact that you have to do a lot of reading and that there are these weird puzzles that you need to solve, and none of it really seems to make sense. But because the cost of making these things are so low, it's worth remembering that Weather Factory are two developers, a husband and wife team, and contractors, that in order to make a living doing this, you don't necessarily need to have a mass audience. You just need to make sure that there are enough people who are interested in this sort of thing to be able to cover your costs, and then, some surplus to make sure that you can keep the lights on. And it's funny, like, it's not that these types of games have gone away, but if you take a look at the new releases section on Steam, it can very often be the case that what people are doing with these lower cost engines is they're making less expensive versions of games that they really enjoy. So, like, I remember one time doing this experiment, I took a look and I saw something like, this is the low-cost version of Rocket League. Obviously, Rocket League's free to play now, but, like, it's basically, the game was obviously inspired by Rocket League. And the thing is that I do feel that some game developers should probably aspire to do a little bit more, right? To show us something that we haven't seen. Because in the end, the reason why I'd buy or not buy a game like Rocket League probably isn't about the price, right? It's not like if somebody knocked off $5 on the price of... I'll try and think of a game that has like a price. Elden Ring, right? I haven't played Jump King, actually. But yeah, like if Elden Ring I've had the option to buy and I haven't done it yet. And it's not like if only Elden Ring cost $5 less, I'd pick it up. I'm sure I'll play it at some point. So if somebody were to make like the low budget version of Elden Ring that cost $5 or $10 less, it's not really that it's the price that's keeping me from playing that. It's I have other things that I want to do and other things that I want to play. And in the case of Hush House, in the case of Book of Hours, I've played more of this game than I have Baldur's Gate 3, which I do actually own. And it's not because this game looks better than Baldur's Gate 3. It just happens to be something that I really can't get anywhere else. Whereas in the case of Baldur's Gate 3, I'm still trying to work through Divinity Original Sin, so that's a little bit of a push against. So yeah, I mean, again, the idea here is not so much to draw the battle lines. The thing that's wonderful about gaming is that there's enough room for both types of games to be supported. But what I particularly like about Weather Factory's approach, and I in fact said this to them in the interview, is that, like, on paper, these games shouldn't work at all, right? Like, they should just completely lose every dollar that they put into making these games. You know, Cultist Simulator, a game that is very obscure and you know, you have to learn it by playing, but you know, while you're learning and playing, it kills you, right? On paper, that sounds like the least fun game possible, and yet it was successful enough to spawn this sort of sequel. But yeah, and I mean, again, it's just an example. It's like William Goldman in his book. What is it called? My mind is gone. Just give me a second here. I think it's Adventures in the Screen Trade. He had like 3 books, but let me just take a quick second here. For those of you not familiar with him, he's a reasonably famous screenwriter. Did Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Marathon Man. I think he might have written A Bridge Too Far. And The Princess Bride. Oh, Misery. There's a few. Anyways, he's a good screenwriter. But let me see if I can find his... Yes, Adventures in the Screen Trade, a personal view of Hollywood and screenwriting. But he... his famous line in... his famous line in that is basically, nobody knows anything in Hollywood. And I think the same goes for games as well, which is, you know, a lot of people can like, we're all kind of trying to drive with the using the rear view mirror, right? You look at past success and try to use that to draw forward. And I mean, what else are you going to do, right? But the fact of the matter is that we really, even the best publishers don't sign games that are very successful, and they produce games that are not successful. And so that's one of the reasons why I always hope that there's some room for people like Weather Factory to make these things. And I really appreciate you saying that, Mr. Venero. I mean, in the end, games like Book of Hours are great for this because there is so much of yourself that you put into the character. But, you know, in the end, it's just an interesting topic to talk about. Yeah, I'm sorry if I forgot Princess Bride, but yes, he definitely did Princess Bride, both the book and the movie. Anyway, let's see what I can do with my skills. So we tried sharps, and I think I said it was glass blowing and vessel crafting next. And back to our friend Saint Tretto. Okay, so we've got the Deerday lens, the amethyst ampule, Ichor vitreous, but we've not tried the knock yet. So if you add a metal, I'll create an exotic alloy. Well, we definitely know how to do that, so let's just get that out of the... Well, actually, I don't think I can fit a metal in here. Oh, hang on. No, it looks like it might be looking for lantern, actually. Let's see if I can sneak in. Okay. Okay, if I add glass, I can distill a more potent lantern liquid. Ugh. All right. Maybe we leave Saint Tentretto for now and try something a little more traditional at the foundry. Okay. So glass isn't the real problem here. We can just throw that in. Now, probably if we add the iotic essence, that should give us enough lantern. No, that isn't enough lantern. Okay, I think we're going to have to go straight to the alchemist glassware then. Right, but that won't let me add the... Oh, that's a tricky one. Okay, the Shrine to Saint Januarius, I can probably sneak this around because I can add the foss because of the sky here. But then where would I get the glass from? Sneaky. Oh man, this is actually kind of a fun little challenge to work through. Yeah, so these aren't going to work. Oh, but we could probably add the amethyst. No, we can't add the amethyst ampule because it's not about the knock. It's about the other elements. If you have a connection when watching or playing a movie, they manage to grab you, which is exactly... Yeah, exactly. One of the things for this game and for Cultist Simulator as well is the fact that the... Like, so the thing I like the most about it is the way that... oh, I wonder... Does a lens count as glass? It should. It does. Oh, but will it let me have... It will! Okay, cool. I think we've got something now. Anyways, so one of the things that I appreciate about this is the way that it reminds me of like radio dramas. So as a kid, I wound up listening to probably too many radio dramas, but there are worse things that can happen to you. And they, you know, it's kind of the same thing that makes reading really fun. You get a lot that you can... okay, cool. So we've got Ichor Vitreous for both of them. But yeah, so you have I'm trying to think of the right way to put this. Like when you're listening to a radio play or you're like reading a book, there's obviously that certain amount that you hold on to for yourself, that you can imagine what, Zaphod Beeblebrox looks like, or like sometimes you'll watch the movie version and you'll feel excited or disappointed because the character or the looks or doesn't look like you imagined, or that scene plays out exactly the way that you imagined it would, or all the other cases that you can think of. And I think one of the things that's fun about these games is that they really capture that element, and it's something that I feel like probably should happen more in games but doesn't. And it may just be that they're focusing on other issues. But again, it's just one of these cases where it's always nice to recognize when that's happening. Okay, I've got the Ichor Vitreous, so I want to mess around with that if I can. I'm just trying to think the best way that I can make some of this happen. We might actually have to use the Watchman again. Yeah, and I mean, again, this is the thing that's kind of nice about developers that are able to kind of keep their costs in line. Now, I mean, again, like, it's obviously different developers are in different stages of kind of their life cycle. There are different reasons why people will go down certain paths or not. But one of the ones that works best for us, if you're of a certain temperament, is definitely one that does keep the costs in line, and they don't feel that pressure to make the type of game that that requires 100,000 people to buy it for it to be a break-even game. And again, you want people to make a good living, right? I would feel bad if we as a society can't find a way to reward the people who take creative chances. but on the other hand, right, like there is a certain risk that you take when you go a little too narrow on your focus. So, but again, the idea that it costs less to make a game nowadays does allow us to experience a different type of game, and I think it's really good that that happens. So, as much as we can preserve that, we should want. Yeah, and I mean, in some cases, yeah, I don't always want to attribute it to greed. Like, there is something to be said for, like, the big thing for me is that I actually really do love big, spectacular games. So, like, for instance, one game that I thought worked very well was the Machine Games adaptation of, or, sequel to Wolfenstein, right? Wolfenstein: The New Order and The New Colossus. I thought those were very, very well done. And, in that case, like, I really like the Philip K. Dick book, The Man in the High Castle. So I was pleasantly surprised at how well it sort of seemed to fit in that style. And it's certainly not a direction I would have expected Wolfenstein to go in. Now, the fact of the matter is that is a very mainstream kind of game. I think one thing that's impressive about it is that it didn't necessarily have to have the story that it did, but I'm very happy that it did, because it certainly punched above its weight. So in some cases you can actually get both, and in the case of something like Wolfenstein: The New Order, it's not so much greed that's driving them to try and make the kind of return that they did. Just the simple fact, it's just so much as the simple fact that you have so many people working for you, and they do all need to be paid for their effort. And so as a result, the game does need to hit a certain number of sales. But again, for a husband and wife team, your costs are not the same as a ZeniMax or a Machine Games. So they're able to do something a little more tightly focused. And obviously we're not getting like the virtual reality tour of Hush House, but it's certainly a very special game in its own way. How are you doing, Beth Kinda Sorta? Okay, I think I need to face the reality that I'm not going to be able to get 15 out of the Ichor Vitreous right now. So my best bet here, if the Ichor Vitreous is a requirement, so we can take the Faust, which is 2, the Vitreous, which is 6, and what I would need to do is between the memory... I need to find 9 between the memory and the secondary slot. Now, I can definitely see something happening with the alchemy set. So if we take the substance... really may have put myself in the corner here.